All right, first and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and great glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Achad, Quadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that rule well, and salutations to the elect pushing this truth to the four corners of the earth and truth and its sincerity. All right, in this particular video, I want to touch on Trump's tariffs, all right, and the effect that it's going to have on the economy. Now, after I say a few things, get a few precepts, I want to play this video that you see on your screen right here. Tired of all the winning yet? Trump tariffs already raising prices, right? And if you don't know what a tariff is, it's basically a tax. So anytime you hear a tax, I'm at a tariff or a levy, it's basically a tax. And how these tariffs or taxes work is when United States put them on somebody, like let's say China, for instance, 145% tariff or tax. That means all goods that are imported here to the United States, when these importers get these shipments, they have to pay that tax. They have to pay that tariff. All right. So they have to pay 145% more on that. Now, how do they get their money back? Well, they have to raise the prices in the stores in order to get their money back. You see? So raising these tariffs or taxes on these goods or on these countries, hey, is a bad thing. Really, the American people are the ones that has to pay these tariffs. All right. So you have a lot of people blowing the whistle saying, hey, these tariffs are bad, man. You have Trump and his people saying that these are a good thing because it incentivizes Americans to start building here. But that's not really happening. People ain't going to have the money to build anything. All right. So this is aiding in inflation and all of that. So get ready to see higher prices in your grocery stores, because he has a 145% tariff on China right now. Now, China and United States had agreed to pause their tariffs on each other. China's tariffs on the United States was what, 125. All right. And this tariff war that they had between each other was actually destroying both economies. All right. You had the global stock market falling. All right. So they agreed to have a pause. All right. And also Trump paused all the other tariffs he had on all the other countries as well. Now, he was supposed to strike over 200 deals before July 7th. That didn't happen. So he extended it to August 1st, or he's going to put additional tariffs on people. All right. On these other countries. Two in particular that I want to touch on is Mexico and Canada. All right. He's already stopped it with China. China right now was at 30% tariffs. And this is just the agreement to pause it. But after August 12th, it goes right back up to 145 if they don't decide to extend it again, which most likely they're going to do that. All right. But Mexico and Canada, and Slovakia, if I'm all over the place right now, but Mexico and Canada, if they don't strike a deal with the United States before Friday, August 1st, which is this Friday, then, which is a couple days, then they're going to be hit with an additional 30% tariffs. So that's going to be 30% tariffs on all goods that's coming here to the United States, and 35% to Canada. All right. Now, we get 60+% of all of our fresh fruits and vegetables and nuts from Mexico. So more than half of the produce here in the United States come from them. You see that? About, I believe, 40+% of all meat come from Canada. And also a lot of crude oil. America gets a lot of crude oil from Canada. And I believe Canada also holds the power, or is powering 3 states. I don't know what those states are. I didn't know, but they slipped my mind right now. So putting tariffs on them is a bad thing. All right. So, hey, we're about to see price increases through basically everything that you buy, man. And China, 80% of everything, like as far as electronics and things like that, 80% of those things come from China that we get here in the United States. I'm talking car parts to little knobs, lights, bumpers, things that you need for your engine, products, windshield wipers, and windshield, solutions you put in your vehicle. I'm talking about sneakers, clothing, utensils that you eat with, plates, your microwave, refrigerators, electronics, your phone, your TVs. A lot of that comes from China, or mostly all of it. You see? So basically, with these tariffs in place, we're going to be paying a lot. Am I right? We're going to be paying a higher price in a lot of these goods, man. Almost everything. All right. So what is this going to end up doing? This is going to end up having people get laid off. Why? Because with less goods coming in, you're going to have less truckers. And with less goods and more being on these trucks, you're going to have less people that need to be hired to stock them. Less people hired to stock it. Well, that's laying them off. There'll be less cashiers. That's going to trickle down to less janitors, so forth and so on. All right? They're going to be laying off a lot of people. See, this, right, like these little mom and pop shops, they're going to be closing down as well. All right? And these little restaurants out here, they're going to close as well. Why? Because these mom and pop stores and these restaurants and these other little businesses out here are not going to be able to afford to provide their services. All right? Shit, these big stores can't even do it like that. They're bitching and moaning right now. So how much more these littler stores? All right? If somebody owns their own little grocery store, Issachar owns his little store, and there's an increase on goods, guess what? He's going to have to start firing people because it's going to be harder for him to restock those shelves and also pay wages to his employees and keep everything afloat while everything is going up. But his pay ain't going up. But the price and the cost of everything is going up. You see? He's either going to have to fire some of his staff, a lot of his staff, and pick up that workload himself, or just shut down altogether. We saw that when Crown Vic Royale came out. All right? Shit got so backed up, they had to just shut down shit, man. All right? Let's say somebody owns a little restaurant. Well, they're going to not be able to buy fresh produce. Well, they'd be able to, but it's going to be more expensive to buy fresh produce and fresh ingredients, to give their customers, man. So what they have to do, they'll have to start laying off people as well, and pick up a lot of that workload, or do what some of these businesses are doing right now, is just to shut down completely. You see? That's why right here it says tired of all the winning yet, because Trump talked about winning. We're winning the trade war. But Trump's tariff already rising prices, right? And your wages ain't rising, man. It reminds me of this precept right here. It's Ecclesiastes 12:4. We read, and the doors shall be shut in the streets. It's talking about these businesses out here, man. All right? Now, there's a lot of businesses out here where I'm at. Little mom and pop stores, bakeries, and, places where they go sew your shit up. And if your electronic is broke, like your phone broke, they'll put a new screen on it. All that shit gonna be out the window, man. It says and the doors shall be shut in the streets. These businesses, man. When the sound of the grinding is low. That's talking about working. All right. When it's talking about grinding, it's talking about work. A lot of people are not going to be working out here. They're going to not have a job. All right. Especially if there's nowhere to work at. And he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. Right. But let's read 3 right quick. I think I skipped over something. In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, the elites, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few. Right. The workers are going to cease because they are few. All right. Because they are few. And those that look out of the windows, Slakia, a little excited, and those that look out of the windows be darkened. Right. But the point is made. These doors are going to be shut in the streets, and the grinding is going to be low, which means the working, man. So these businesses are going to be closed out here. You see? Could this be the thing that triggers, all these businesses closing down here in America? I don't know. But this is something we're just going to keep our eye on. No further ado, let's hop inside this video.
Time now for Money, Power, Politics. And tonight, we start with this headline from the New York Times. Quote, Trump is winning his trade war. What will it mean for the actual economy? We've seen him use his leverage to announce new trade deals around the world that include big tariff rates, levels that would have seemed unimaginable 6 months ago. Let's be clear. Trump is remaking the world economy around tariffs, something he has been talking about for more than a decade. He's defying expectations, and right now the U.S. economy is holding up. But the big question is, how long will this last? There are plenty of unknowns swirling around the so-called deals themselves. Will they even hold up? Many of the deals are light on details, and countries could push to rewrite them when they have the leverage. In some cases, like with Japan, it seems like these two countries cannot even agree on what they agreed to. As far as...
That's right. Let's read that real quick.
The big question is, how long will this last? There are plenty of unknowns swirling around the so-called deals themselves. Will they even hold up? Many of the deals are...
Trump's new trade order is fragile. And I want you to look at the thing with Japan and the United States. Now, he was just on the news talking about this historic moment, this historic deal that he just did with Japan. It's a lot if I seem a little distracted. I am in transit right now. But right, he was just talking about this historic deal that he did with Japan, but both sides are interpreting what they agreed to. They're interpreting wrong, man. One side is saying that what they agreed to means this. The other side is saying it means that. So they're not even clear to the interpretation of the deal. Isn't that funny?
Are light on details, and countries could push to rewrite them when they have the leverage. In some cases, like with Japan, it seems like these two countries cannot even agree.
Financial Times. Cracks widen in Japan. Salaki, I'm driving. In Japan and United States, U.S.'s interpretation of tariff trade deal.
On what they agreed to. As far as all of these promised investments go, we might not actually ever see them. You might remember in Trump's first term, he struck a deal with China that included a promise to purchase $200 billion of American exports. That never happened. And then there were these tariffs that are already directly impacting Americans. Procter & Gamble says that people are spending less, shopping less, and only buying things they really need. Remember, these are 10 and 15% tariff rates in the trade deals that are still huge increases. Yes, they're not 50%, but 10% is still big. That means that American companies, big and small, are suddenly facing much higher costs, leaving them to decide whether to swallow that cost and lay off workers or pass it on to you, the consumer. So Trump may be winning, but are Americans? What about it?
Or they can do both. Things get so bad that they lay off workers and they pass the cost off to you. All right? They have to lay off workers, and still these tariffs are causing these importers to buy these goods at an increased price, and these importers want to get their money back, so the few goods that they get, they put a ridiculous price on it. All right, so they'll still have to lay off people, and then the prices will still be high as hell. All right, this is how it looks like right now in the future if these tariff deals don't go through, man. Trump was supposed to make over 200 deals by July 7th, and he extended it to August 1st. Why? Because he wasn't making any deals. All right, that deadline, he only made about 3 deals, and he just did the Japan one, and we're seeing what they're saying right now about the whole Japan deal. They're having problems interpreting it, man. One side is saying interpreting it this way, the other side is interpreting it another way. All right, so hey, is that shit even gonna hold? Well, we'll see.
Joining me to discuss, Dan Nathan, CNBC contributor and co-host of the Risk Reversal podcast, and Natasha Sarin, former Treasury official and Yale law professor. What's your thought? Trump says he's winning the trade war. He is getting trade deals or frameworks done.
Right, they're frameworks, right? So when we think about just going back to the first administration, when they first slapped tariffs on China, it's 2018, it was March. We didn't really have a phase one deal in place with China until January of 2020. So you kind of just laid it out here. We have a deal supposedly with Japan. We have a deal with the EU. If you think about those two blocks, they're about 25% of the imports that we get right here. And we just don't really have a lot of detail about that. So what hasn't come to the table right now? It's Canada and Mexico. They're about 25% of our imports. Those are two of our best allies here, right? And so this week, the focus has been on China. Well, they're about 10% of our imports. So when you think about the Chinese, you think about how nothing's really happened over the last, let's call it, week or so as we've kind of had these talks here, especially in Stockholm over the last few days. You have to ask yourself, if you're the Chinese, why are you rushing to do a deal if we are not even able to do a deal with our two biggest trading partners, which is Canada and Mexico? So I think there's not going to be a lot of there. And just really quickly on your point about who's winning right now, because the economy, what is our economy saying? Well, right now we saw a huge pull forward. A lot of American companies were buying goods. A lot of consumers were buying goods right before these tariffs might go in place. And therefore you've seen artificially inflated numbers, whether they be by companies and their earnings or by our GDP that we're going to get a read on tomorrow. But the real reason that the Fed is staying on hold, we have a Fed meeting tomorrow, is because they have to see what the inflationary pressures are going to be. You just said Procter & Gamble. These are staples. They're raising prices. They're passing it through to consumers. These are all the reasons why the Fed is on inflation watch here, and that's going to be the thing, the bugaboo, I guess, for the U.S. economy. If
inflation leads to famine. All right? I say it again, inflation leads to famine. When you go to 2 Kings chapter 6 and 25, it talks about that famine in Samaria and how they were buying asses' heads for, I believe what it was like, 80 pieces of silver, man. That's expensive as hell, man. Buying a donkey head, and that barely got any meat on it. They were buying calves dung for 20 pieces of silver, I believe. Which is they were buying dove shit, man, to eat. And the point I bring, the reason I bring that up, the point is they were actually buying still. They actually were still, buying and selling. And this means what? It was inflation, because they were paying a ridiculous amount for some bullshit, man. And in one particular case, dove shit. But hey, that's right. So inflation leads to famine.
starts to slow, but inflation starts to tick up. We have stagflation.
Well, it's, what does winning a trade war look like? The Yale Budget Lab has a new report out laying out the impact these tariffs are having actually on us, not just headlines. Break it down for us.
Yeah, so first fact that we should all kind of wrap our heads around is no one actually wins from protectionism. So there are no winners from a trade war. Some numbers that my colleagues and I have put together that I think can provide some helpful context on where we are today. We have effective tariff rates in this country as of current that are about 18%. That is up from about 2.5% at the beginning of this administration. Those effective tariff rates are going to lead to pricing.
Dang.
That's up from about 2.5% at the beginning of this administration. Those effective tariff rates are going to lead to price increases on literally everything that Americans buy, on the order of magnitude of something like 35% for apparel or 12% for consumer electronics. And the reason why those price increases are going to exist and maybe haven't fully kicked in yet in some sense in certain industries like apparel is because there has been this pull forward of inventory in anticipation of these tariffs. What importers were trying to do was try to kind of pull in as much as they could into the economy in order to have to avoid the fact that ultimately they are going to have to raise prices because there simply is no way to eat a tariff of 18% when you were operating in a world that was more like 2 just a few months ago.
Yeah, and to your point about like what consumers or what's going to be passed.
That's deep. She's saying there's no way that, these importers can foot that bill of 18% when we were just operating in a world that was 2% a couple months ago, man. And let's not forget, he's talking about tariffs on shit, basically on everybody, man. He says if anybody buys oil from Russia, and this might even extend to just do business with Russia, and aid in this Ukraine thing, then what's going to happen is he's going to put 100% tariffs on them. An additional 100% tariffs. Damn. Well, who's going to have to pay for anything that we get from these people, from these other countries? Well, the people here in America is going to have to pay. All right. That's why every video I do on tariffs, I break down how these tariffs work, man. Just, so you know, man, hey, they're basically a tax. Tariffs are taxes, and who pays the tax is the American people. All right. These other countries don't pay the tax. So when he says 145% tariff on China, they're not suffering. They don't pay 145% tax. What happens is the importers over here do it. And it makes the importers here stop buying the shit over there, which hurts this economy over here, but also it hurts the economy over there. All right? So that's how the tariffs work. Anyway.
By companies who are buying this stuff. Just today in the stock market, this is a lens that I often look through. You had UPS, stock was down 10% after their earnings based on some supply disruptions, supply chain disruptions, weaker that kind of demand, that sort of thing. Whirlpool, right? They make a lot of, appliances that go into homes, that sort of thing. That stock was down 13% after their outlook, right? We saw Royal Caribbean. This is a space that has been been a really hot space over the last year or so. That stock got clobbered based on their outlook. So we're starting to see a lot of companies speak to this. You just mentioned Procter & Gamble, and I could give you a number of examples over the last week or so. Some real American companies like Lockheed Martin and GM and IBM and Intel, these companies have been getting clobbered based on their outlook. So you're starting to see the companies speak to it. The stock market, though, is still 1% from its all-time highs. It's still up 30%
but that's
from those
also
April lows.
because when you talk about the stock market, it's a few overweight companies that are doing phenomenally well. And when you look under the hood, there are all sorts of companies struggling.
Also, a piece that's important here is the companies are obviously reflecting this in their outlooks, but Stephanie, we're talking a lot about like what the American consumers are actually starting to feel. And if you look in particular industries where we're all just talking about our children, durable goods that children and kids use are in 90% of those are imported. And so the result of that is we already know that Americans are feeling this when they're looking at the prices of things like strollers or car seats. There are double-digit price increases already that they've experienced. So I think we're in a world in which consumers are actually starting to feel this really substantially. And to give the Trump administration credit, actually where credit is due, our budget lab estimates are that they're on path to raise something like about $3 trillion over the course of the decade from these tariffs. The problem is, and that's a great thing to do, by the way, especially
but
in
it depends on who they're getting it from and
exactly.
why.
The problem is this is a very bad way to raise revenue, right? We obviously need to raise revenue. We're in a difficult fiscal position, but raising revenue disproportionately from low and middle income Americans, who are the ones that consume the most of their income, just isn't the right way to go about revenue raising. And also doing it in such an inefficient way with tariffs that are this tool that really cause a ton of distortions in the economy.
Well, I hope that was edifying. And with that, I'm going to say shalom.